Jeffersonville Township Public Library for inviting me today and for the participants here. So we're going to have a journey through two cultures, through two countries. And I'd like you to, instead of thinking of my journey, I want you to think of it in this way. When I say who am I in relation to place, I want you to think of who are you in relation to place? And when I say, where is home for me? I'd like you to think of where is home for you? And as I go through the presentation, I have some paintings and poems I'm going to recite for you, but we're going to be exploring love, loss, survival, resilience, balance, and belonging. And then we're going to have a chat at the end. So hopefully these poems will speak to you, and you'll carry your own images in your head. But the first images I have up here are of Ireland on the left. It's an island, and then in Indiana. And actually, some little trivia, but the size of Ireland and the size of Indiana are the same. They're 150 miles wide and 350 miles long. And the population isn't that far off. Indiana is 6.7 million, and then Ireland is coming up at around 5.5 million to date. So what's similar, what's different? And that's some of the things we're going to go through using the poems. But the first thing I'd like to share with you is when I came here, I was really homesick. I missed my country. Even though I traveled from Ireland to the south of England, to the north of England, the distance between Ireland and Indiana seemed huge. And it was a gut-wrenching homesickness that I had. So much so that way back when I arrived in 1990, the very first poem I wrote was called Exile Song. And I'd like to read that for you. It's been a while since e'er I saw you. It's been a while since I was home. But don't you fear because I love you. When I lay my head down, I know I'll be home again someday. It's been all of 7 years. It's taken all my innocent ways. But I can still see your colors. When I lay my head down, I know I'll be home again someday. It's been all of 17 years. It's taken all my blonde hair, but I can still hear your music. When I lay my head down, I know I'll be home again someday. It's been all of 27 years. It's taken all my breath away, but I can still smell your flowers. When I lay my head down, I know I'm home today. Now that might sound a little dramatic and a little depressing, but it took me a long time to actually get to the next stage. And I'm going to switch now to here, there, and back again, because we have been here 30 years and life has moved on, and I have settled. I want to explain how you can be authentic in two places, how you can feel at home in two places. So the next poem reflects that idea that now Indiana is home. So this is called Here, There, and Back Again. 34 years away from Ireland, 30 years in Indiana, the here and there life, the home from home, consequences of decisions experienced and later understood. Here and now life in Indiana, peaceful, quiet moments, amid chaotic bursts of dust like a meteor smashing into earth, life-shattering, mind-boggling. The community chat revs up the brain. Life's problems are solved for a moment or masked and pushed down. Shared bonds of culture and humor bring sadness and joy together. Visit Ireland again, but hurry on back to Indiana. So you might already get a sense that I'm a bit confused. And that is how I live my life, and sort of trying to figure out how do I not be so confused? So where is home, and how and when do I feel at home? So to give you a little bit of background, maybe back in 1986, we moved from Ireland to the south of England and then the north of England, and before we moved here. Each time it was supposed to be for 2 years. And the first time we moved, we ended up after 18 months moving again. Second time, 18 months. So when they said, "Hey, would you like to go to the States?" And this was a job-related opportunity for my husband's work, where he had a career of 34 years spanning the entire time that we were moving. So it turned out that we thought we were coming to the States for 2 years, and we're here. We're here 31 years, but we do have a home in Ireland. And if you look at that map, right down the very south is where we have, right in the middle there, a little town called Youghal. So I'm going to move the presentation on to, this was the very first time that I did a painting. Okay, so I joined my friends who were asking me for about 2 years, "Come join us, we're doing painting." And I was like, "I don't paint, I don't know how to paint, I don't want to paint." And then I realized that they were going for lunches and having wine. And I thought, I'm missing out. So I joined them. And the very first day that I joined them, Bella, who was the friend, but a teacher, an art teacher, said to us, "Here's your blank canvas. I want you to paint one line of texture, then another, then a third, and keep going to the top of the canvas." And when I had finished painting, a strange feeling came over me. I felt I had painted Ireland. It was from nothing to imagination, but in that step between having nothing on the canvas to, in my mind's eye, seeing Ireland, I found a comfort. I found I could be in Ireland even if I didn't have to get on a plane and go there. I found this channel of art to get there. So the art actually came first in this situation. But I'd like to read a poem called "Land of Mine." And I think you can see how I am very much attached to land, to the actual physical earth and to the land. And so the poem called "Land of Mine" goes as follows. So far away, an isolated memory, as time goes by, it inhabits even a smaller space. Life happens, energy is zapped in the moment, waiting for another day, another way to visit that place, mind and spirit together. Art and words come easy now, making sense of every mood. Latter days consumed in legacy, life lived well, land of mine. And so with this global pandemic that's on, it's not as easy to get over and back. So we were going over and back to Ireland 3 times a year. And we were staying for about 10 days at a time to visit family, to catch up with friends. And about 20 years ago, we bought a home in my husband's hometown of Youghal. And the idea was that when we would retire, we would have more time and we would go over there. So the land has always been important to me for the reason that my great-grandparents actually, according to the census of 1901, 1911, they owned land in the west of Cork. So if you remember the map, down the very south is Cork, and to the east is Youghal, my husband's hometown, and mine now as well. And then to the left would be the west of Ireland. So the land that was in Inchigeela was actually passed down through my great-grandparents to my grandmother, to my father, to my mother, and then in 2008 was passed on to 5 siblings, of which I am one. And that connection to the land has really been something that I can't let go of. And so I'd like to read you of Land and Poetry in Chigila to give you a sense of life in a village in Ireland and the connection that people have to the land. I know that was very much part of the year we left home by Jean Thompson, the connection to land. So this is also a sort of a Midwestern attribute. So we're kind of reflecting on my Irish experience, and then we're going to bring that over into my Indiana experience. So hopefully that this is how this is playing out here. But I'd like to read of Land and Poetry in Chigila to you. Standing on a ditch overlooking lofty ranges, perusing the same cragged hilltops my grandmother knew as a child, her son, my dad, sharing his gift of land and poetry, shouted, "Cast your eye from the top of the hill to the depth of the valley, as far as you can see." The vastness left an impression. The impression left a mark. The mark left an indelible memory. The memory found a voice, the voice found a pen, the pen found paper, the paper came from a tree, the tree returned to the bog came home to me. This bog, high above the village, contains dead trees and crushed life. In contrast, the people from the village are alive with stories, song, and laughter. Through words and images of familial ancestry, my story joins their recited stories. Over time, friendships take root and pass to another generation. In sterner days, there was no return. Presently, in good health, the travel is tough, the reward glorious, and the circle complete. I came home to the bog. Now, we are in a global pandemic, so getting home, and the bog is this peaty, really dirt-like material that actually can become fuel if you light it, but it's scattered. I always thought it was in one place, but it's actually scattered in around this land. There was somebody who had the right of turbary on it, but we were able to receive that back. Turbary meaning that they had the right to cut the turf at one point. But so now, what does that mean in these days? How easy is it to travel to Ireland? We did get the opportunity to go in last July, and we didn't know if we get in. It was a very unusual situation, but there was 39 people on a flight that could carry 250 people. So it had a certain sense of weirdness to it. We did have restricted movement when we were in there for 14 days in our own home. It meant we could go for a walk, and luckily for us, it meant we could walk on the beach and we could go to the shop. And so to get food. So we really weren't doing anything more than we had wanted to do there. And then eventually we were able to see some family and friends. Right now they have returned to quite a strict lockdown in Ireland. They have just added the US to the quarantine hotels. So in order to go into Ireland now, first of all, you should have essential business. And secondly, you will be asked to stay in a hotel at your own cost and quarantined, meaning you're not allowed outside the hotel room. So you will be there for up to 10 days. So right now is probably not a good time to go to Ireland. And that's really sad for me, but you know, you respect other people's need to do what they have to do to get the virus under control. So that's where I'm at right now with our time to Ireland. I'm going to move on here and show you a lot of my paintings are these half and halves, I call them, because I was doing them for a long time, and I realized with this aha moment, I actually was doing two cultures coming together. So that became a sort of an abstract symbol for me. And I realized that this point of connection is where it's at in the center, trying to connect two cultures. And when I looked up, I had this ability sometimes that I say ability, I have this way that I think of a word, I don't know the meaning of it. I look it up and it's exactly the word I'm looking for. So I was rhyming a poem, an ecotone, a word I really felt I'd never heard before, but it must have been somewhere in my subconscious. I looked it up. It said two landscapes coming together. And so I took from that two, the sea, the sky and the sea, to see, two things coming together. And then it had a really interesting little tagline onto it. It talked about a duck has webbed feet. And a duck has webbed feet so it can walk on the ground and swim in the water. And I thought, that's exactly what I've been trying to do. I'm trying to live in two places, and I'm just like that duck. And I'm hoping as I'm speaking here that people are relating to what I'm talking about. So the poem that I'd like to read with that is The Best of Both Worlds. And it is a poem in my Point of Reflection book. I have 3 paintings and poetry books. Point of Connection was the first one, Point of Reflection is the second, and Point of Perception is the third. So here's my take on living in two worlds and how that works. The best of both worlds. Whether the sun shines or the wind blows, you'll find me on an airplane going home. Maybe you'll find me on a boat or a bus. Whatever the object of my transportation, I'm on my way. Driven by love or fear of losing ties, my vein is pumped and my heart is full. After soaking in the views and renewing senses, my mind returns, and then it's time to reverse the sojourn. Back again, my other home awaits. Two worlds exist, and I experience parallel lives. The hairdressers, the coffee shops, friends and family equally shape me. Except for sea and sand, my days are similar, mirror images of self and self. My world is my world. So again, I focused a lot on the of Ireland and what Ireland means to me. When I tried to think of Indiana, I'm really not a plein air artist, so I don't go out and just paint sceneries and take in the beautiful sceneries that there are in Indiana. I mean, when we came first, we missed the sea so badly that we would drive to Bloomington to Lake Monroe just to see the water. And then we would see the rolling hills on the way down. And that was therapeutic for us. We did that every Sunday for about, in the summertime for at least 2 or 3 years. And then, we found the covered bridges over by Rockville. We found Madison down to the very south. I'm looking forward to going to Jeffersonville, Harriet. I'm really wanting to get there in person. And I know our son has gone to live in Nashville, Tennessee, so we'll definitely be making a drive down there as soon as we can. So these trees for me represent Indiana. They represent, these are my new roots. And I realized that because I started to paint trees. And first off, I called them magic trees. And then I'll read magic trees to you, and then I'll tell you how I feel that the trees are helping me to connect to Indiana. Magic trees. Where the light pulls your eye, the magic happens. Lost in the never ever land, truth and imagination. Energy drives sweat to my brow, replenished by more energy, constantly reminding me of life and love found in the forever land. Present and past come together in this beautiful wonderland. So we moved to Carmel, Indiana originally, and only since December have we moved to Zionsville. And these two paintings, interestingly enough, about 4 or 5 years ago, they were bought by a lady in Zionsville. I have not been able to reconnect with her, but she seemed to really enjoy them and bought one first and then the second. But after living here for only since December in Zionsville, I'm very much aware of how the people here in Zionsville really love their trees. We have just wonderful walks, and the golf course is surrounded by trees, and you know, all the streets are called after a tree. So Maple Street, Poplar Street, Hawthorne, Sycamore. Every tree you could think of, there's a street named after it. So I feel like I'm really, again, have found home. When I painted, I want to say that it gives me a sense of self. And this sense of self and this rootedness allows me to feel that I've actually connected to new roots, but I haven't forgotten my old roots. And I think there's been a lot of research about trees, how they communicate under the ground to each other, and they help each other. And I feel like that is a good metaphor for how I view living in two places. This place, I put down my roots, and this is the Indiana me. And it's complicated because it took me a long time to feel authentic in two places. So, you know, my people who know me know that my Irishness is always shining through. It's as soon as I speak, somebody will ask me where I'm from. If I talk to somebody, they'll immediately connect to some story about where their ancestries came from. And so I feel like I've integrated into the community. And that's really, I feel, very important. If people have studied sociology, there's like 4 different stages and strategies for acculturation. And there's assimilation, separation, integration, and marginalization. Now, we haven't time to talk about that today, but I'm going to read you what integration means, and then we're going to talk about how a person allows the opportunity to live authentic to their original culture, their birth culture. Maybe you have come from a small town into a city and you want to honor that small town. Maybe you've come from a city into a small town, you want to honor the city. But I find that to feel whole, to feel like I'm truly not at odds with myself, I have to center myself and feel like I belong in 2 places. So the belonging is very important to settling in, to being integrated. So let me read what integration is. Integration occurs when individuals are able to adopt the cultural norms of the dominant or host culture while maintaining their culture of origin. Integration leads to and is often synonymous with biculturalism. So biculturalism is when you feel equal in 2 places. You're not living in one place and pining for the other. I've done that, and it's not easy. And so if anybody is struggling with that, I say join an organization. We have our International Women Indiana organization. It's a wonderful support group for people who are new to Indiana, either from abroad or Americans who've lived abroad or have come back in, or just people who are open to understanding cultures and wanting to be friendly. It's a social organization. If you're having difficulty with trying to adapt to your new place, a family doctor is a good person to go talk to. You know, it's good to reach out and tell somebody how you're feeling. if you're feeling at odds as to who you are, who am I, and where is home. These things, if you don't sort those out for yourself, I think you miss a quality of life. Maybe you'll never even know you're missing it, but I think if you feel like you can be whole in the moment, accepting yourself for who you are, but honoring your origins, paying attention to the characteristics of those origins that are your value systems often. So again, in the Midwestern experience, and referring to the book, The Year We Left Home, Martha and Norm, they put work first. This was a Midwestern value system they had, or the work ethic, the farmer, the industrialist, the Germans who came and settled here. All these traits, characteristics are coming from another generation and passing through our DNA. So for me, it's my great-grandparents on the land who passed it on to my grandmother. And then that switch over. My grandmother moved from the country to the city. My mom was a city person. She married a town person. I was a city person. I married a town person. All these interconnections between city and rural, and trying to find a way through those connections that you can, where you're comfortable. And that's kind of where I've taken those poems. Those poems have helped me to see, where am I going with life? What is happening? So it's not just the words, but the images also help me work through things that I'm thinking about. So I'll switch here to this painting called Memories of Capel Island. And what I'd like you to do is to think of the word memories and think of a word that I have in here called constant. And I'm going to then explain a little bit of how this relates in general to people who have moved maybe from the town to the city, or the city to the town, or from one culture to another. Let me see how we're doing on time. Are we good, Harriet?
It is 10:32.
Okay,
we're great.
We're good. All righty. So Memories of Capel Island, and it is a view from the top of the house we have in Ireland. We don't see it exactly. We see a horizontal view. That's why a lot of my paintings have this half and half going on, because we're on a hill and then we're looking out. We just see the sky, and we see the island and the Knockadoon Head. But in our vision, we're actually got Victorian houses between us and that vision. But again, it's like everything else. Rooftops have become just a joy. I love rooftops. It doesn't bother me that we don't have a clear view of it, but we have this sort of community, and then we have this space and island and Knockadoon Head. Memories of Capel Island. Whether eyes open or closed, whether busied or idled, whether sunshine or rain, whether in laughter or pain, whether half-hearted or sincere, whether rich or austere, the Knockadoon Head is constant alongside the Capel Island. So staying connected to who you are, I feel, is like this island. This island sits out there all the time, and it's not going anywhere. But it also, I said it's constant, but it does have changes that happen. The winds, the rain, the boats maybe hitting up against it. These are all little chinks and things that are beaten on it. It's just, if you think of a person who's moved culture or moved from town to city, they are also being battered and pushed and moved around. And even though you might look the same, things are changing and you're adapting. Or if you're not adapting, you're suffering, So there's a kind of a sense that you cannot stay the same. once you move, you're never going to be the same again. Now, if you stay in the one place your whole life, of course, you're never going to be the same. Every day can be different. But the thing about moving cultures in particular, I think, is it can bring you either closer to family or it can pull you apart. And the reason for that is sometimes people start to misunderstand your new culture. I'll give an example. By living in Indiana and living here for 30 years in the States, I have become a person who makes lists. Now, when I go to Ireland or I call them on the phone and I say I'm working through my list, they're like, well, we don't have lists. We're much more laid back. We're not so into this list thing. And I've learned I can't live without a list. So again, you have this friction of just expectation and how things work in two different places. So when you go back and you're, maybe uptight and getting through your list, it looks like as if you're different now from what you were. Another example, not this year, and this year and last year, I've missed it so badly. My husband and I, we go down, and Annette is here. She came with us 2 years ago now. We go down to Global Gateways in Indiana University, where they have students who do student abroad. And so for me, I do Ireland, and Annette did Australia. But we know we could have anywhere from 3 to 17 people in front of us who are going to Ireland. So one time I asked a retired teacher, could you write a letter to tell these students, what's it like to be a teacher for a day in Ireland? Because this was going to be their new experience. And the first thing he wrote to me was, tell them when they get up in the morning, not to be so bright, and I'm going to paraphrase, not to be so bright-eyed and cheery, because we're only just getting out of bed here and we're just going to work. So again, you can see how different cultures value different things, and different people in different places learn and take on the values of the location. So your environment does shape you. And, we love Indiana. So that's where we love both places. And we hope to, as long as we're healthy, to be able to sustain that opportunity of connecting in both places. Let me see here. Okay, so I talked a little bit about how you adapt, and when you come first, to a new place, how you can be a little homesick and how you can be a little bit down. And what I think I'd like to do now is to read you a Rainy Day in Y'all. And that is going to be in this point of perception. It's interesting, when I write a poem, sometimes I don't know where it's going. Like, I wrote this specific poem, and it was really, for me at the time I wrote it, just about the weather, just about how I was feeling. And I gave a talk to our International Women, and we had a speaker who was a psychologist, and she took my poem and she changed it into a whole relocation thing where, and I'll explain as I go, but she took the sunny day being where you have adapted to your new life. So this is called Rainy Day in Y'all. Like the humdrum sound in my head, the drip drop rhythm of rain interrupts my thoughts. Calm before storm, hazy, lazy Sunday afternoon. Nothing to do, no one in sight, no imprints or footsteps on the sand, just quiet reflection of life mirrored in a hazy, lazy sea. Where are they now, those sunny days? Focusing on a glimmer of light fills my mind with hope of warmth. Cool colors and twisting waves soothe my soul for now. infinite view, horizontal line, crisscrossed waves. Lead your eyes to the sky, time lost in rainy atmosphere, hoping against all hope for a sunny day. So now the sunny days are hopefully coming again. And again, it's about loving where you are, making the most of it, making friends, joining organizations, finding meaningful work, finding purpose, raising kids, whatever it takes to be purposeful, I think, is for me. That's always been where I've come from, is to be purposeful. And again, I'm going to read you the poem. Let me see. I'm going to move on to a photograph here that Brendan, my husband, took of Carmel, Indiana. And we've, as I say, we have just moved. So that experience of moving, you know, loving where I'm planted doesn't mean you can't uproot and plant again. And so I didn't know I was going to do that, but when we were in Ireland for the couple of months last summer, we got used to walking to the shops. We got used to going for the coffee, and we got used to a smaller community. So we found that again in this community here in Zionsville. But Loving Where I'm Planted actually is the name of a poem that I wrote about Carmel, Indiana. And I was very fortunate in Carmel. I started Carmel Creative Writers. It's a not-for-profit, a community-based writing community organization. The mayor of Carmel was very supportive of me. He, in fact, saw and liked, when he saw one of my readings, he was the one who pointed out in a poem called Tranquility that I had point of connection. And in fact, the first book became that title, Point of Connection. And I gave him the painting, which was called Tranquility, and he put it into the City Hall in Carmel. And he put it in the architects department because he said they would like things like that. So I'm very proud that my painting is in the City Hall. Loving Where I'm Planted, Carmel, Indiana. I'm riveted by Carmel, from ordinary to extraordinary. The designs are new and old, simple and complicated. Observing from top of city center, I tarry to take in the farmer's market spread fresh with produce, craft, and taffy. Festivals of art, stories, and song together bring about economic and community growth. Blending cultures from Cork, Ireland to Hong Kong, the arts and design elements both combine to make our city strong. The manicured landscapes of the roundabout leads the way to color and symmetry of a suburban future, unique to urban living. A choice of city or rural meets my needs. The Monon with its active lifestyle cuts a path through nature where a large white egret lands and feeds. The Palladium and theatre location, short distance from Main Street, speaks to Mayor Brainerd's lofty vision, a man who upon seeing you will meet and greet with warm attention to your conversation. Around the traditional well where water is drawn, you can see people interact with pleasure. Life here is comfortable, and through giving a helping hand, I cherish the opportunity to be myself and nurture my talents planted on the city land. And so we're coming towards the very end here. And I thought I'd put up this painting called Energy. Again, you can see the water's always on my head, but the trees have become important to me. The trees are all around us here in Zionsville. The ability to walk along the river path and so forth. But I had an opportunity one time to do a workshop with Sherry Wagner, who was a poet laureate. And we walked on the east side of Indianapolis, and it was called Schione Creek Trail. And afterward, you know, I showed a lot of my paintings, and so the paintings would come and then the poem would come after it. And so at one point after this workshop, Sherry wrote to me and she said, Rosaleen, could you write about your experience? And I first thought, oh no, I actually have to do a painting first and then the words come. But then I realized Sherry had asked me and I thought, you know, I'll give it a go. And so this is one of the first poems that I wrote without a painting. And I now actually do very little painting and I write much more poetry. But I'll share this one because I think there's a line in there, hearts and spirits, rooted indeed, tall sycamore, more than its sum of foliage, branches, and seed. So again, one of the things that I want you to think about is how can we be more than the sum of our parts? How can we be in two places at the same time? How can we connect to two different ideas at the one time? And so I'll just read that, and then I have maybe one more poem, and we'll go over to the questions. Okay, is that good? On walking in Schione Creek Trail, Fort Harrison State Park.
Oh, that would be nice.
What makes us wander through the woods, the smells, the sounds, the many hues, the hope of seasons, berry foods, or catching the poetic muse. Like mix of flour and milk for dough, together pummels and smooth. Words and phrases flourish and flow, reminds me of a lover wooed. Journey similar to this poem, hearts and spirits rooted indeed, tall sycamore more than its sum of foliage, branches, and seed. Whatever your particular bent, nature calls out to everyone. I sure am happy that I went, walking and gathering words for fun. And so the very last poem here that I'd like to read to you is from Point of Perception. And this is the third book in the series. You don't have to read all three. You can pick up any book at any time. But the last poem here is called Distance and Culture. And this, you never know where a poem comes from. This poem comes from my husband went into a gas station and there was a Polish lady behind the counter, and he came back and he told me about the conversation they had, and it became a poem. Distance and culture. Different in time and culture, but hearts remain the same. Whether local or foreign, farmer or city dweller, can get along on common ground. Foreigner, I've spent all 18 years in this town. Local person, I left when I was 18. Equal years, what's the difference? What is the same? The foreigner, not so foreign. The local person, not so local. Where home is felt and shared. Distance will not break the bond of love. Pain will fade and happiness will prevail. Thank you for your full attention. I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop the share now, and then Harriet will maybe come back in and start a question and answer session. Is that okay, Harriet?
That would be great.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to know, how do your children feel about the United States versus your homeland? And were they born in Ireland or in the United States?
That's two good questions. Okay, so I have two boys, and they have, one is married, and the oldest guy has two daughters. And so my youngest guy is getting married on the 15th of May. So we're very excited about that. So to answer your questions, the eldest one was born in Ireland, and we took him when he was 6 weeks old to the south of England, north of England. So he came to the States with an English accent. We often tease him about that. But it turns out that James was born here then, as we've been here so long. But there are different families share their culture differently. Many Irish families will set kids up in Irish dancing, even Irish language, and they may be second generation Irish. They have, and they keep the tradition alive that way. And there's a wonderful center in Cincinnati called the Greater Center for Irish Heritage. Maureen Kennedy and her husband Kent do a fantastic job in keeping Irish heritage alive. Because we're first generation basically that came here, and James would be first generation born here. We had that opportunity to have the flexibility to go over and back. So they really just kind of fell into understanding the culture by virtue of being there with us so for several times, maybe twice a year. They at least came every year when they were younger. As they're getting older, they're maybe every 2 years. But they get the culture. And I give an example. My oldest one, we have a very fond memory of being in a small town. And of course, we say we lost him in the pub. He didn't come back up for dinner, but it wasn't that he was hungry or anything. But next morning, I'm walking down past the church because we're going down to the village to get scones for breakfast. And as the people are coming out of the church, they're all waving to him. And I'm like, how do you know these people? And he goes, Mom, they're my best friends since last night. So I think they get the culture very well. They get the humor. And they really love family, of course, and they love being there. And I love seeing them there. That is one of my greatest joys, is to see them all together. And they've come over for together, so two couples together, and it's been wonderful.
Well, I think I mentioned that I was in Ireland, but it's been a long time. It was in the late 80s. But when my husband and I were there, we felt very safe. And we were in Dublin and we traveled a little bit. But how does that period compare to present days? Would you say it's still very safe compared to, let's say, the United States?
I think safe is a hard word to define, maybe. Certainly the friendliness of people is what Irish people are known for. So I think you always have to be alert to your surroundings. I would always say that no matter where you go, you have to be alert to your surroundings. However, the joke about asking somebody directions and they'll put their head in the window and they'll talk to you for 5 minutes how to get somewhere. That is how it works. And I think, we spend a lot of time in the smaller areas than the cities nowadays. We tend to go where the water is, to the west coast, down south. East is also wonderful with castles or up towards Dublin. And nowadays you have to fly into Dublin. Shannon is not actually open for cross-Atlantic flights. So our travel has changed. So we're in Dublin more. When I was growing up, I never went to Dublin. It's like, I don't know what you'd equate it to. I think somebody might say, well, we never go past the 465 in Indianapolis, and people are like that. We don't go, we're so busy in our lives, we don't always travel to some of these places. But Dublin has wonderful beaches also, because it is on the East Coast, and it has literature centers and theaters. So I recommend Dublin as a visitor. I would definitely recommend that you take in part of Dublin.
Definitely. Does anyone have any questions? I don't want to hog everything.
I don't have a question, but just a comment, Rosaleen, to say how much I appreciated all that you shared. And I'm in awe of the language that you have, not just for words, but through your art, even in your oration, in telling the story, but with your poetry and in incorporating your art. It's such a skill. I imagine for your own process, but also in witnessing it. And I mean, there are certainly parts that I can relate to, and I so appreciate the sense of transition as one tries to navigate two countries. And in my experience, I can correlate this sense of being a visitor in the first place in coming here from Australia. And then there was a time when I gradually felt that I was visiting Australia. And then there was a place where I felt that I was not grounded in either, that I was simply visiting both. And it's a process. It's a part of the transition of building those roots. And for me, the discomfort that came with that was a sense of superficiality, which, you know, you describe as searching for the purposefulness in both. And then gradually feeling like I can have both feet in both places. And when I'm in one place, I'm in home. And when I'm in the other place, I'm home as well. So I guess I was hearing what you were sharing with two different ears. One was your story, and then one was the parallel of my story. And I just so appreciate your talent for being able to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Annette. That's exactly what I want people to be able to do, is to, once the poem is written, it's passed out into the universe. And so whether you're reading it or whether you're hearing it, it's really, there are layers. And so that's why poetry, I think, is so wonderful. You can read a poem to a third grader, or you can read a poem to a person with 20 years experience of something, and each person can get something out of it. And that's why I think I really appreciate that was something that you could relate to. And I agree, there's, you know, for me, James went to college in 2013. And that's when I had time for myself. That's when I really started painting and writing. And that's only from there on did I have something in Ireland that was totally mine. I had people, I could go to the library in Cork and join their writing group. Even though I would only show up twice a year, I fell in with them. There was like, you know, again, the year we left home, they talk about tribe. I felt I'd found my tribe, you know, and that's a great feeling. And so when I go over there, I have festivals I can go to, or people have asked me. I did Women the World Over, a celebration and commemoration of 1916 for the Irish Revolution. That was held in 2016, a 100-year commemoration. But, you know, I was again invited in with people who were writing about Ireland. I went to a diaspora global summit in Dublin. So I've been able to find a niche where it's, I can learn from others and I can be part of, I think that belonging, if you felt you were just visiting, you've got to dig deep and find how can I belong. And of course you have family that you belong to, but I explain sometimes family changes and you change. We have new friends in this hometown that we are very, we're on WhatsApp, you know, we're doing all the modern technology of staying connected to them, but we you know, have formed friendships even later on, because as you know, it's many times people make bubbles of friendships and it's hard to get into groups, but we have found people are open to new friendships, and we're all always looking to make new friends. Not that we don't appreciate the old friends, but we just feel like it's a part to learn and grow. And there's excitement in coming across people that we haven't met before and sharing ideas or sharing family stories with.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have any advice, Rosaleen, for someone who's interested in writing poetry?
Yes, I think there's lots of two ways of doing it. You have the community writing groups, like Indiana Center has one, Carmel Creative Writers has one. The go listen to poetry. Brick Street Poetry, I've been very fortunate. Just as I moved to Zionsville, a phone call came from the lady who started and founded Brick Street Poetry, who was actually our very first poet laureate in Indiana, Joyce Brickman. And she asked me to be on the board of Brick Street Poetry and to host the Readers Series here in Zionsville. So it was like I was in the right place at the right time. And so for that, we're actually have our first in-person meeting on May 6th with Norbert Krapp, who's also was a poet laureate. And he's going to come and read from his new book. So I would encourage you to go and join a writing group. Some of them are critique groups. Some of them are just our Carmel Creative Writers as a learn, network, and share. You can ask for feedback, but it's not a sit-down critique group. I also do one-on-one tutorials, and that was one of the things with the pandemic that changed. You know, somebody asked me to do Zoom meetings with poetry tutorial, and you know, you say, well, can you teach poetry? You can certainly develop a person's skill set. You can help them understand the craft, and you can encourage, you can support and inspire and encourage. And so there's lots of different ways to get involved. If anybody wants to learn more about that, give me, you know, have they got my email there somewhere? Can you
I can send it out to everyone. I'd be glad to do that.
That'd be great.
It looks like we're at 11:01. Does anyone have any questions? I hate to just end it without everyone getting their questions answered.
Well, you can always shoot me an email if Harriet gives you the emails. If you have thought or questions afterwards, send me an email. I'll be happy to answer you.
I would be more than glad to.
Well, thank you, Harriet.
No, it's all thank you, Rosaleen. This has been an amazing hour, and it's truly remarkable, and we're so pleased to have you today.
Thank you.
Have a blessed day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.